Welcome everyone to today's information session on the 2023 Infy Makers Awards. My name is Stephanie Santoso and I'm a Senior Program Fellow with Infosys Foundation USA, and I'm really looking forward to sharing more details about Infy Maker Awards and how you can participate in this wonderful opportunity, which provides funding and professional learning support for educators to engage students in computer science through Maker education. Today on Indigenous Peoples Day and every day, I wanted to share that Infosys Foundation USA is truly committed to growing its support of Indigenous communities through its efforts to broaden access to CS and Maker education. We honor and recognize the diverse cultural history and contributions of Indigenous people and how these are integral to our nation, culture, and society. So just to provide a little overview, here's what we'll be covering during today's session. I'll be providing a summary of the foundation, Infosys Foundation USA's work and our mission and the Infy Maker Awards. We'll spend some time reviewing the application and judging process and timeline. And then we'll also talk more about how you can use the funding you receive if you're selected as a winner and the unique professional learning experience you'll participate as a winner, which will be led by the nonprofit organization Digital Promise. They've done incredible work in this space for years. And my colleague, Kelly McNeil, who is a learning experience designer at Digital Promise, is here with us and will provide some additional information about this. We'll also have time at the end to field any questions you might have. And I'd like to encourage you to enter any questions you do have in the Q&A box if you have access to that. We'll also monitor the chat feature if it's easier for you all to post questions there. And we'll do our best to answer those questions during the second half of the session. So feel free to populate those two areas with questions as they come up throughout today's session. So just as a little background context, Infosys Foundation's mission is to access to computer science and maker education for K-12 plus students and educators across the US. So that includes the whole spectrum of K-12 students, as well as students moving into their post-secondary education experience, whether that's at a four-year college or a community or technical college, as well as adult learners as they're really developing their professional career. Through grants that support innovative programming and professional development and several signature programs and initiatives, the foundation works closely with educators, school districts, nonprofit organizations, and other key partners. And so Infy Maker Awards is one of the foundation's signature programs. We're entering into our 8th year of running the small grants competition. And to date, Infy Makers Awards has supported maker education initiatives in more than 120 communities across the US. And we've provided more than $1.2 million in funding and professional development support. One additional initiative that you might be interested in is the Pathfinders Online Institute. It's really a complement you can think of to Infy Makers Awards, but the Pathfinders Online Institute is a dynamic online platform that provides free, high-quality computer science and maker education content for K-12 students, teachers, and families. So you can create a free account and access a broad variety of lessons, activities, and tutorials from a bunch of different leading content providers. We've just included a couple here that those of you who are in that intersection of computer science and maker education may be familiar with. So Microbit, Bird Brain Technologies, and Raspberry Pi. And so my colleague James, who's also online, is going to drop the link to Pathfinders Online during the session so that you'll have access to that as well. So let's turn to the awards. So the Infy Maker Awards is open to educators from K-12 schools, universities, community colleges, libraries, museums, makerspaces, and youth-serving nonprofit organizations using maker education to promote equitable and inclusive pathways for K-12 plus students in computer science. So 10 winning educators will receive a $10,000 grant and then the opportunity. So they'll each receive a $10,000 grant, not 10,000 total, but every winning educator will receive $10,000, and the opportunity to participate in the Making CS Inclusive cohort, a professional learning experience facilitated by Digital Promise. And that experience will be a cohort that will run from January to August of 2024. The grant is flexible funding. So really, when this program was first designed, we recognized that educators around the country just have very different needs, are working on, the shared thread to their work may be that they're working at the intersection of maker education and computer science, but the ways in which they're working with students or implementing programming or doing community outreach can look very different. And so that funding can really be used for a broad range of different purposes, whether that is materials, projects, research, community engagement, stipends for fellow educators, or stipends for student interns or employees. And that's just a few examples there. Just a little word about the eligibility to apply. So I talked already a little bit about how this is really open to both informal and formal educators working in those different settings. But I also wanted to flag here that the institution or organization where you're teaching or working must be legally registered as a 501c3 or a 170c1. If you're chosen as a winner for Infy Makers Award, the grant will be provided to your institution or organization, whether that's your school district, or your nonprofit organization, but it'll be scoped for you to use for your specific project or initiative. And then what the winners received, we've talked a little bit about this already. Something just to share is that for the Making CS Inclusive cohort, that's part of what you receive as a winner, is this access to this very customized and personalized professional learning experience, is that we'd like for each winning organization to have at least 2 educators from your organization or institution participate in the professional development experience. We think it's really important that educators have a team of folks that they're working with, and we recognize that that is likely the case with the work you're already doing, is that you're not working on an island, that you're working with other educators or other folks within your learning community that are either collaborating or supporting your work. And you can have up to 3 educators that can participate from your organization or your school or institution. Kelly will get into more details about this later, but the cohort experience is virtual. So that the sort of like, there's not a in-person component that could be a sort of barrier to access. We really want to make sure that we recognize that winners may come from all different parts of the country, and that was the case previously. So Digital Promise will be bringing together the cohort virtually on a regular basis. And then I'll talk a little bit more about some more specific examples of how winners have used the funding in the past, so you can kind of get a better sense for what this looks like sort of in communities functionally. So just in terms of timeline, the application for Infy Makers Awards closes on October 27. So there's definitely a few more weeks until the deadline, and the application closes at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on October 27th. In mid-November, we'll be announcing the finalists on social media. And then by early December, winners will be notified, kind of close hold. And then we plan to publicly announce and celebrate the winners right before folks kind of leave for the holiday, winter holiday, but the week of December 18th. So it's a pretty quick turnaround in terms of, I think, grants and grant competitions, as far as grant competitions go. In January is when the virtual kickoff for the Making CS Inclusive cohort will take place. And then the cohort will meet on a monthly basis, and that'll include both virtual sessions and individual and personalized coaching through August of 2024.
Stephanie, real quick, there is a question. I wasn't sure about a question popped up in chat. I answered one of the questions about time frame, but from Jacqueline, we had a question about eligibility to apply. She is
Mhm.
asking, are fiscally sponsored organizations without their own 501c3 eligible?
Yes, I think that should be fine as long as you're treated. I I understand that some 501s are fiscally sponsored as opposed to being their own 501. As long as you were treated as a 501 and have a fiscal sponsor in place, then that is fine. That shouldn't be a problem. Yeah, that's a good question. Thanks for that, Jacqueline. All right. And anything else, Kelly? Thanks for that. I forgot to kind of pause around any
No,
questions
you're
from that
all
section.
good. There was another question from Taylor. I answered that one in chat. It was a timeline question, and that's it. So if I see any, I'll let you know.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. So to apply is actually pretty straightforward. So you just need to visit infymakers.com. You'll see an apply now button, and then you'll be taken to an online application on the platform called Submittable. So if you've never used Submittable before, that no worries. You'll just need to create a free account on the Submittable platform, which hosts a wide variety of different kinds of applications. One of the reasons why we use Submittable is that so you have the capability to be able to start a draft of your application, and then if you need to go back to it, you can always save a draft. So it doesn't cost anything to create the account. It just allows you to be able to kind of work on your draft gradually if you need to before you ultimately submit the final version. And I'm just going to walk you through a couple of the key components of the application here. So the first portion of the application is pretty straightforward. It's just going to ask you basic contact details about yourself as an entrance and your school, institution, or organization. We'll ask you to note if you're working specifically with underrepresented or under-resourced students because of the fact that that is such an integral part of the foundation's mission, and a main goal here around Infy Makers Awards is really to support under-resourced and underrepresented students in STEM fields. One thing to flag is that if you're chosen as a winner, I had mentioned before that we would like to have at least 2 people from your organization or institution participate in the Making CS professional learning experience. And so we have a question in there where we ask you to share the name of 2 or one additional person, or 2 additional people for that to participate in that professional learning experience. So you'll see that question in there.
Couple questions coming in to the Q&A. One of them, I think they're probably in there looking ahead at some of the questions. And so they said their focus group is based on design thinking principles, so they don't have a specific project yet. Must they name a specific project on the application?
I think so. I think that's great that your focus is on design thinking principles. And I understand it sounds like because of that, it's a bit open-ended, which is not a problem. I think what we just need to understand is really trying to understand if you're doing a project that is focused on something design thinking, and sort of the details of what that project may become may take formation a little later down the line, because it's based off of the work you do with educators or students. Then what we'd like to see is you be specific about, and this is for every proposal, is to be specific about the challenge that you're trying to solve for. Like, what are you trying to address in terms of the challenge? What's your goal? Ultimately, I'm sure that even though this is a more open-ended type of project or initiative, there must be a reason why you're choosing to use something that is very design thinking focused. And so if you can speak to that in your in your proposal, in the application, that will be really helpful. And I think speaking to the fact that part of the ultimate outcome of the proposal may still be determined because of the fact that it is a design thinking. It's fine. I think if you can just call that out, that would be helpful. But there's no problem there. I do think, though, just to flag that we do need to. There's a certain level of certainty that we need to have in the proposal. For example, we would like to see a budget attached to what you're proposing, even if it's at a very high level. That's what we're asking, is a high level budget. You don't have to get into the details and in the weeds around what model of laser cutter. I'm just making an example. You might not have that in your budget, but if you know that you're going to have some equipment and materials that are going to be tied to this project, having a sense for what equipment and materials would be really helpful, and dollar amounts addressed to that, estimates around that.
Couple more questions coming in. One of them is around the sustainability question. They're asking, should they name the other grants that they have on the sustainability question?
I think that is helpful if, in fact, you have other, other funding or support that is truly going to help you to continue this work or build off of the work that you would be doing as a result of of this grant, if you were to be chosen as a winner. That being said, I also don't want to discourage educators or organizations that maybe don't have funding lined up. That's not a requirement as a winner. I think if in fact you're at a much earlier stage of the work, and what you're proposing is much earlier stage, and you're starting something versus building off of something. The sustainability question is also for us to just better understand how you're thinking about sustainability moving forward. And that it can take the shape of like identifying funding opportunities or sharing with us other funding you have available, but it could also be about thinking about how you might support sustainability through things like strategic partnership development and other sorts of approaches. I hope that's helpful.
There's a couple more questions. I don't know if you want to wait. One of them is an internal Infosys question, so I don't know that we could probably wait on that one. And then another one is about editing the application. So I know you've got a Q&A at the end, and I didn't want to throw off all of the timing of everything if you wanted to go forward and have a chance to review that Q&A. So just let me know.
Yeah, no, that's great. No, I think those questions that you shared were really helpful, and they're like on point in terms of where we are in the conversation. How about if I will move through this section around like the application features and the questions, and then maybe if there, and then we can hold till the end, because I want to also make sure that you have some time too to share more about the Making CS Inclusive cohort. But that sounds good, and we'll make sure to address all questions, whether during this session or with a follow-up email if we run out of time for any reason. And so we sort of started talking about this section, but we have one question, which is really the kind of we're asking you to really share on an abbreviate level, a proposal, right, for the project. So that's the description question. So we ask you to provide a description of the project that you are you're looking to get support for. And so in that, I shared, we really would like to see you talk about the challenge that you're looking to address. Providing details about who the project will serve is really helpful, and how the project will be structured. So is this, something that you will be doing in collaboration with partners within your organization or outside of your organization? And then the projected impact. What do you think this, what do you think will be the impact of this project? And then we like you to identify the computer science concepts and maker education concepts that align with this project. And if you haven't, you don't have to be an expert in computer science education or maker education to apply for this this opportunity. We really wanted to make sure that this is open to as wide a set of educators as possible. So we actually have embedded, you'll see in the application, links to a couple of key resources that identify and kind of outline key computer science concepts, and maker education concepts. There's a Digital Promise Maker Leadership Framework that we link to, as well as Agency by Design framework around maker-centered learning. So those are there as resources so that you can kind of map what you're doing to both computer science concepts and maker education concepts. And then the budget is the other item that I had already shared earlier. Just we'd like to see kind of a high level budget, and we've included you'll see a link to a template just to give you a sense for what that can look like in the application. And then the last few elements of the application is two key elements: a short video and a support letter. So the video should be no more than 90 seconds, and it should just creatively talk about you, your school or organization, and how you would use the Infy Makers Awards to impact the lives of your students. I want to emphasize here, this doesn't have to be a high production video. If you want it to be, like if you have experience with digital media or filmmaking and you like to get really creative, that's great. Feel free to do that. But I also want to iterate that in the past, some of the most compelling videos and videos of winners have been as simple as an educator, talking into their iPhone. So you can film this on your phone, and that's not a problem. And actually, many and most of our videos that are submitted are filmed on a phone or partially on a phone. And then finally, we ask that you provide a support letter from either your school or organizational leader, which expresses their support for your project and your participation in the Making CS Inclusive professional learning experience. We've provided a letter template to make this easier. And so, if you are working at a school, that could be your school principal, or, if you're at the district level or you could get that support letter from your superintendent or, deputy superintendent, or if you are working for a nonprofit organization, that could be like the director or executive director of your organization. So I just want to pivot us here to talking about the scoring criteria. So this is, and I will also just encourage you all to, if you do have additional questions about the contest rules or the scoring criteria, for example, we do link to the contest rules, and we also have FAQs on the Infy Makers site that can be really helpful. Both of those are really helpful references. And here I just wanted to call out the criteria that we're going to be using to review each application. So need, strength of proposed plan, educator's perspective, innovation, and the support letter. In terms of need, we're weighting this really heavily here. I mean, as I mentioned, we're really wanting to prioritize educators who maybe don't have the resources in their community already to do this work, or are doing this work on a very small number of resources. So that includes educators who are working, maybe at a Title I school or working with low-income students, as well as educators working with, another underrepresented community in STEM fields. So that could be English language learners, Native American, African American, and Latinx students, or students who are neurodiverse or those with disabilities. Strength of the proposed plan is another key area. And so we'll be looking to see whether collectively, that, the project description that you provide, the budget, the video together, all of that, indicates a really well thought out idea. And it's something that like you clearly, your community and your learning community clearly needs. And it's ambitious, but it's also feasible. So we want it to be right sized we realize that 10K is a limited amount of money. So we want to make sure that it's also something that's feasible given the funding and support that you'll be getting. And then a third criteria is the educator's perspective. So we want to see that an educator shares a clear and strong perspective around what motivates them to create opportunities for students to engage in CS through maker education, and that this perspective is really aligned with the foundation's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then the last two elements, innovation. So we take a really broad definition to innovation. So we really want to see a plan that demonstrates creativity and resourcefulness in addressing any current challenges or constraints. That doesn't mean that the idea you're proposing has to be brand new, that no one has ever done it ever in the history of education. If you have an idea that you think is like that and you want to apply, that's great. But we recognize that there's some really amazing work already happening right now. So if you have seen a program that has worked in another community or in another context that you'd like to bring to your community or your school or organization, or the students that you're working with your organization, that can be considered innovative. We just want to see that you are, your idea is trying to address a challenge or a constraint or obstacle in a way that hasn't been necessarily tried before. That being said, if you're coming to us submitting a proposal to build off of a project that you've already been doing, that's great too. That just means that you're going to be probably serving maybe more students or expanding your programming in a new and different way. And that's considered innovative too. And then finally, the last element here is the support letter. We just want to make sure that you have the support you need to be able to do the project if you were selected as a winner, and to be able to participate in the professional learning experience. And before I turn things over to Kelly, I just want to recognize and introduce this year's Infy Makers Awards judges who have extensive experience in maker education and that intersection of maker education and computer science. They include teachers, leaders in the maker education field in both the classroom and informal learning spaces, such as museums and libraries, and they'll be helping us select this year's winners. So I just want to thank them in advance for their willingness to contribute their experience and expertise this year. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my colleague Kelly McNeil at Digital Promise, and she'll share a bit more about the great professional learning opportunity that Infy Maker Awards winners will have through this Making CS Inclusive cohort. And Kelly, I'm happy to run slides if that sounds good.
That'd be great, Steph. Thanks. And I see everyone's questions. We will definitely get to those. I'll make my piece short here. I just wanted to have the opportunity to introduce myself to everyone. I am so glad you're all here. Lovely to meet you. A little bit about me. I have been in computer science and makerspace education for many years. I was in the classroom. I certified K-12 computer science and really taught at all levels. Primarily, I taught in middle school and high school in some really innovative makerspace environments. I came through education, makerspace, and computer science really through industry. I was not primarily an educator, but I fell in love with it. I'm a huge advocate of project-based learning, all sorts of inquiry-based learning frameworks. The last 2 years I should say it was about 3 years ago now, because I've been at Digital Promise for about a year, but 2 years ago I left the classroom makerspace and I went to work at Arizona State University for the Verizon Innovative Learning Lab program, which is a makerspace program, and I managed their technology and developed curriculum, both for students and for educators for professional development. I am currently a student at ASU working on my educational doctorate. It's an action research plan, and my cohorts that I support through the work at Digital Promise are often contributors into the action research that I'm working on um, with playful professional learning. So you can switch to the next slide. So that brings us to our Making CS Inclusive cohort. As Steph has already kind of given you a preview of some of these, we will have monthly sessions. They will be virtual. I have January through June, as I realize many educators have different times that they break for summer. So this is something that is going to be, as Steph had mentioned, customized based on your needs. I'm a big advocate of adult andragogy instructional design needs. So we will conduct needs analysis and needs assessment where I actually find out from you individually as well as collaboratively in the group what is going to work best for us as a professional learning community. The optional sessions that will run from August through December, again, are going to be based on each of your own individual needs. So if we have smaller groups that are like wanting to meet during those times, that's great. And I will have sessions that are available for us that we ideally will co-design together. But if it's not something that works, it's also something that we want to be a benefit to the learning community and not something that's a hindrance. Additionally, monthly, my calendar is available to you for one-on-one sessions where you can meet and have instructional coaching and talk about really anything that you want. I've helped people with proposals for ed tech conferences, just a variety of things. I am also not the master knowledge of everything that is makerspace and computer science by any means, but I am a heavy networker. I'm connected to a very large network of experts of a wide variety. I have some of my own little niche expertise. I'm into gaming and I know a lot about Twitch. I'm a Twitch streamer. I've started playing a lot with generative AI. So I have a lot of different, emerging technology skills, but there is a wide variety of skills and technologies that are in the makerspace. None of us can know all of them. So my strengths are often in convening people, facilitating, bringing people together. So that's other things that will happen in those sessions is I may say, well, I don't know, but I know so-and-so that does know that, and I can hook you up with that person. So the learning in the Making CS Inclusive is very personalized. We start out with goal setting. So I don't have a learning plan for you of what it looks like right now because I haven't met any of you. And so it is going to be individualized based on the context that we all come together as a professional learning community. It will be playful. This is my thing. I like playfulness. I like to bring games and interesting, innovative practices into it. So that's what you can expect. And I often ask everyone very much in the beginning, what is it that you bring to the community? Because everyone in a professional learning community, it's an active experience. Everyone has something to bring and to contribute. And I'm going to be asking, do you want to lead this session? Do you want to talk about your expertise in this? And then what do you want to learn? So like I said, none of us can know everything. And there's always possibly one or two fields or topics or something that we want to try out and we want to learn. And that's what we want this space to be. So that's pretty much it. So I can, if you want, Steph, for me to go through some of these questions, we have a few questions up here. I've kind of like ranked them in order of like what's probably very easy to answer versus what might be a little more difficult. If you just want me to start reading them to you.
Yeah, that's great. And thank you so much for sharing that overview of the professional learning experience and of yourself, because so much of why I think the last year's cohort had such an incredible experience was because you yourself have such an amazing background in this work and you're so passionate about this work and you bring that to the cohort. So thank you. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Let's go to the questions.
Okay, great. So probably looks like the first easiest one. Once the application is submitted, are they able to go back in and edit it before the deadline of October 27th?
So very good question. So there is an option on your submittable account when you're completing the application that says save as draft. So there's two buttons I think it's towards the bottom of the your draft application. There's save as draft or submit. you just want to save as draft if you don't want to you don't want to submit the application, which I'd recommend if you think you're going to want to make some edits to it and things like that. Once you submit the application, you won't be able to edit it. So you're just going to want to like make sure that it's in sort of the final state that you want it to be before you press that submit button.
Perfect. The next question, and this question was asked when you had the how to apply, and I saw the different questions, and I thought I knew the answer, but I'm waiting to ask you all of these questions. So she was asking on the second question, there was check boxes for you to say which body of students you serve. She is saying that, or the anonymous attendee, he or she is saying, if I am not an educator, but a nonprofit organization, and we help middle and high school girls to get into STEM, what should we answer of those options that were on the checkbox? I can.
Oh, that's a good question. So, if you're, so I think that, and we use the term educator broadly. So like, I think you would still, based off of the work you're doing, certainly we would consider the organization you're working with. And that it sounds like you or your colleagues would be educators, and potentially maybe in the informal space, because it sounds like maybe you're not a school. But there is a follow-up. There's this another question that is, so I would say click on the boxes, and you don't just select one. So click on the boxes that apply to the work you're doing. So if you're working specifically with middle school girls, if you're working with middle school girls that are English language learners, like you can click on, select those check boxes that most apply to the students you're serving. And then what would be very helpful is we have a question in there that is more specifically about telling us more about the students and families you serve. And that would be a really great place where you can get into a bit more detail. And this goes for everyone, about who those students are. And if you do have sort of demographic like statistics on, the students that you are serving, and you have that available, that can be really helpful just in terms of providing us with some baseline background context. If you don't, that's fine. But if you can elaborate a bit on the students that you are serving in that question, that would be really, really good.
Okay. The next question comes from Valerie. She says, if I, as the ED, am applying, should I get a letter of support from our board?
That would be great. I think that that's a very good question. But if you are the ED and you are applying on behalf of, yes, I think if you could get a letter of support from a board member, that would be really helpful.
And then the next question comes from Jesse, and it is about the funds and like what they can spend the funds on. He said this may have been answered already, but I know it wasn't. So are we allowed to use some of the grant money to offer small stipends for our teachers if we are focusing on a large interdisciplinary project?
Yes, you can. Just if you can sort of like, if you can include that as a line item, that's a good example of a sort of high level line item to include in a budget. If you can just let us know, how much of that 10K would go towards that. We have had winners that provide stipends for students that were student interns. So certainly there's a precedent for that, and that's totally fine. Just as long as you can just outline that in the budget, that'd be helpful.
Awesome. So we are up to the last question, and Gaurav, I know you asked first, and I saved it for the last because I'm trying to understand your question. This is the internal Infosys employee. So I'm not understanding the context with where Gaurav is coming from. But it says, I tried to apply and couldn't go through. I am an internal Infosys employee who wanted to contribute for this. I am on my own, no team or supporting team members. Am I not eligible in that case?
Okay, I think for that, I might need a little bit more context around that, Gaurav. So if you could actually,
Rob, are you still here in the?
yeah, maybe what I could do is, because you register, what I could do is I can follow up with you afterwards because from registering from this, for this, session, I have your email address. What I'll do is I'll just, if you're not still here, and it might make more sense to for us to take it offline and get some additional details as I might need to just double check with my team if it is more of an internal question. Um, so maybe what I could do, Garb, are you still here? I don't know if you
Yes.
are. Yes, you are still
They've
here.
typed in the chat they are here.
Okay. Um, are you are you wanting to apply for the competition as an educator for the 10K, or are you asking if you can volunteer to support the program as like a volunteer on the Infosys side? And maybe that's something that like we can, if we need a little bit more clarity around that, I can also just reach out to you after this call. um
Yeah, I think that that's probably best. They answered that they could do offline, that they did want to apply in the competition, I believe, but I think probably if you follow up with them in terms of what um, more specifics would probably be a good thing.
yeah.
Did you freeze, Stephanie, or is it me?
Yeah, in general, we do have a rule that employees are not eligible for this competition. I can clarify offline with you, Gaurav. It might be me. Hold on, let me just stop. Can
Okay,
you hear me
I said
okay, Kelly?
I can hear you, but your video keeps freezing, and I didn't know if it was on my end. I'm not getting any unstable connections, but I heard the beginning of what you said, but it was delayed.
Yes. Okay, sorry about that. I took myself off the video just in case it sounds like it might be on my end. In general, we do have in our contest rules, it's clearly specified that Infosys employees aren't and sort of relations aren't eligible to apply for the competition as a grantee. But Gaurav, what I'll do just to clarify, I'll reach back out to you to get some additional information. But thank you for being here and thank you for the question. Is there anything else? Sorry, I had to take myself off video. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Is there anything else before we hop off in terms of additional questions?
Hear you perfectly, and as far as I can see, there are no additional questions.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. We will go ahead and share this recording out with you all by email, as well as some links to some of the additional resources we referenced later this week. And we wish you all best of luck if you are moving forward with applying for Infy Makers Awards. And thank you so much again for participating. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much, Kelly, for your help.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thank you
Talk to
all.
you soon. Bye.
Bye.